Hello, my name is Dr. Luke Bell. I'm lecturer in molecular horticulture at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. This is a screencast of material originally made available for the module Principles of Horticulture and Crop Production from the years 2020 to 2025. Please note that some of the details may now be outdated.
So by the end of this screencast, you'll have an understanding of the characteristics of an adult plant and its crop growth. You'll be able to describe the function of flowering and fruit production and how this can be useful for cultivation. Give examples of how some adult plants can be propagated vegetatively, and describe how pruning can be utilised by fruit growers to produce crops. So the adult phase of a plant's life cycle is kind of characterised by the reproductive phase, and this is a stage where it's very useful for horticultural growers, as the plants themselves will produce flowers and subsequently fruits will develop which contain the seeds. So generally across horticultural crops, that's what characterises the adult part of the growth. So the process of flowering in a crop can be triggered by different environmental stimuli. One such stimulus might be a change in the day length, so also known as a change in the photoperiod. So a transition from long days into short days might cue the plant to transition from a vegetative state into a reproductive state. Changes in temperature also contribute towards transitions in life cycle. So a seasonal change in temperature from a cold temperature to a warmer one might transition the plant into a flowering stage, and this is quite important for crops such as broccoli and also cauliflower, which tend to need a cold period, for example over winter or in early spring, in order to initiate the flowering response required to produce the florets and heads of broccoli and cauliflower. So the flowering stage of a plant's life cycle is very important for fruit production. So during the vegetative stage of growth, the leaves act as the sink for much of the plant's resources. However, when there's a transition into a flowering and reproductive stage, the plant's resources are then diverted from the leaves into the growing flowers and the developing seeds and fruits. So sugars tend to be deposited within the fruiting bodies, and vegetative growth tends to be slowed or even halted at this point to ensure that the fruits develop and go on to seed the next generation. So in this picture, for example, this is a flowering apple tree, and I'll talk about how the flowering response of fruit crops can be manipulated to produce fruits of certain size. So during this time, the fruits develop, and inside the fruits, the seeds also are starting to grow and develop. And this process without human involvement would obviously lead to the production of seeds and plants for the next generation. The fruits would fall from the trees, could potentially be eaten by birds and animals, and the seeds transported with them and dispersed. But obviously for horticultural production, we harvest the fruits for consumption. So fruit trees can be trained, as it's termed, and this involves pruning the tree, for example. So this is a way of manipulating the adult phase of the plant's growth and manipulating the crop into producing fruits of a certain number and size. So the practice of pruning essentially is cutting away some stems and buds from the main limbs of the tree, and this reduces the competition for plant resources. So this is a manipulation of a a property of plants which is called apical dominance. And this is where the primary bud on a stem inhibits the growth of those further down. So by chopping off the end of one of these stems or chopping off side stems, you can encourage the stems further down the limb to begin developing, and they can then develop their own flowers and fruits. And thus the fruit trees can be trained for commercial production. So just going back to this image again, this practice is used in top fruit production. So this is an apple tree which has been trained along a fence. The practice of pruning encourages the tree to produce fewer but larger fruits. So this is more suitable for commercial productions. And in this example, you can see that the tree has actually been grown up against a fence. And this sort of two-dimensional growth of the plant along the fence also enables for more efficient picking. So adult plants in some cases are capable of both reproductive propagation and also vegetative propagation. So one good example of this is potatoes. So adult potato plants can and will flower and will set seeds. However, the prevailing way of propagating potatoes is through seed tubers. And so any one of these potato tubers that you can see could have the potential to grow on to produce another plant. So not only do we consume them, but they also have the potential for growing clonally propagating the parent plant. And so the entire potato industry is pretty much based on this propagation method through seed tubers. There are some examples where some horticultural crops have lost the ability to reproduce sexually completely. They do still flower, so in this example, horseradish. Horseradish plants can only be propagated vegetatively. They do flower in the late summer months. However, it's very, very rare that any of those flowers will actually set seed. And so the plant grows from root cuttings commercially and can often be found on roadsides where it will just grow almost in a natural state, propagating itself through root growth. So in summary, the adult plant is characterized by flowering and the development of seeds and fruits. This process can be utilized and manipulated by growers to produce commercial crops. One of the ways this is done is through pruning, which is a manipulation of the adult plant and flowering to produce larger fruit and grow in a specific way, which is conducive for harvesting. Some horticultural crops can be propagated and produced vegetatively without the need of sexual reproduction, and others have lost this ability entirely.